Hi, welcome to SponsorX, where we talk all things relating to the ever-evolving business of sport and more in particular so the people that makes things happen in this vibrant industry. I'm Gerard Davids, founder of TalkX TV, where we host SponsorX as a content channel. I'm joined by Catherine Hawkins, Director of Think Sponsorship, an industry consulting and training agency which is based in London, England. Catherine will also be conducting an upcoming sponsorship masterclass for our network, of which we will announce the details in due course. And the masterclass will focus both on how to pitch your perfect sponsorship to brands and also entering into a win-win sponsorship deal scenario between yourself and your commercial partner. Details of the masterclass will be made available soon. Catherine, welcome to SponsorX, and let's start off with describing to us what is meant by Pitch Perfect, the art and science of developing a compelling sponsorship proposal.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's lovely to be here and be introduced to your network. And I think, the significance, of the sponsorship proposal has become increasingly recognised in recent times. I think historically sponsorships maybe been done by people being able to access opportunities through connections that they already have. But as you and I were just discussing, there's a real evolving strategic approach to acquiring new sponsor partners. And I think that starts with a good proposal document, which is a combination, I would say, of art and science. I think, a good proposal document enables a seller to tell the story that they want the sponsor to see, and that story showcases how that brand can exist within that platform or opportunity and engage with those audiences. And in that sense, it's got to be a sort of balance of data, assets, values, and outcomes. And that's really what we explore in Pitch Perfect, is how to create that balance of a document that is inspiring and emotive, because that's what sponsorship is as a marketing discipline, but also has that science and rigor and business content within it to demonstrate the potential of the opportunity to a cold buyer. So it's really a session, a masterclass that delves deep into that balance and that opportunity that we as sellers have to really put something persuasive and compelling together to capture attention at that early stage in the sales cycle.
Yeah. Following on that, so how does a rights holder effectively identify and even profile the ideal sponsorship or potential sponsor for a particular project or event? What key factors should be considered by the rights holder when creating a target sponsor profile?
Well, I wish I had a bit longer with you because, there's obviously quite a lot of different dynamics to consider. And I think first and foremost, I'd say this is one of the number one skill sets I think sellers need, is to recognise that there are thousands of businesses out there that could be your potential partner. So it is a case for us as sellers of sponsorship to really hone that list down to a manageable number of prospects for which you really see there to be genuine potential for connectivity. So I think at a macro level, it's a combination of factors that enables sellers to profile and ID their possible sponsor partners. And I think it's a combination of fit first and foremost. And I'll come on in a second to defining what I mean by fit, because it's quite a big term. But I think alongside fit, it's identifying businesses that have budget critically and that are of a suitable size and stability to be able to create and ring fence a budget for sponsorship, which, let's face it, is not traditional marketing. So it's less predictable in terms of how it will perform. But I think the number one thing for me is, and I often say this to salespeople that I work with, is can you express why this sponsor partner needs you? Why does it need your platform and your audience? So what is it that is going to compel them to actually take action and sponsor your opportunity? Because loads of businesses want to do sponsorship because it's fun, right? It's a great medium. It's got loads of different touch points. It can deliver memorability and huge brand benefit. But it is actually businesses that need something, that take action and actually go ahead and sign that contract. So I think budget, need and fit are three interlinked kind of components at the macro level. And then if I just sort of circle back on fit, because that's quite a subjective term. What is good fit between a sponsor and a rights holder? And I think it's a combination of factors, but I think it starts with audience. So finding fit in terms of identifying businesses that definitely have an interest in engaging and inspiring the audience that you represent as a seller. And that is a bedrock, I think, of good sponsorship. Layered onto that, I think you need to consider and reflect on, as a seller, how do you want your platform or your opportunity or event or initiative to progress, and does a sponsor play a part in that progression beyond investing finance into it? So let's take it's the Olympics as we're recording this. We've just had some like really big sporting events with the Euros, Grand Slam tennis events. What I think you see there is sponsors that have enabled the audience experience to be better through being integrated in the event. And that could be through tech integration, it could be through product enhancements, it could be through infrastructure development. But ultimately, what all of those things to point to is objective compatibility. So I think another important aspect in terms of identification for me is around looking to businesses who can bring something beyond money, who can bring expertise, who can bring technology, who can bring innovation, who can bring new audiences, because that's where sponsorship is probably in its sweet spot, where there's a real shared endeavor through the sponsor partner and the right seller to make things better. And I think if I consider best class sponsorship, those two things run through it. So that might be, a way for a seller to start that list of prospects, to say which businesses have an interest in my audiences, which businesses have I got compatible objectives with, and then which businesses are actually authentically interesting to that audience. So there's a sense of it being relevant, appropriate, easy to communicate, because that's going to be important when it comes to activation. So it's a bit of a long answer, I appreciate, but not an easy question to succinctly cover, but hopefully put some thoughts in everyone's.
Yeah. No, great. So leading from that, can you perhaps elaborate a bit more on, resonating with the business objectives of the potential sponsor, but more in particular, the importance of storytelling in a sponsorship proposal by the seller or the rights holder? And how can the rights holder then transform that sponsorship opportunity into a compelling narrative that would then resonate with the potential sponsor? Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's actually where we as sellers can sometimes go wrong, because we tell too big a story, actually, and that sounds possibly a little bit of an incongruous thing to say, because that is our job, right? We are telling stories, we are engaging audiences, we are creating connections when we're working with sponsors. But at the early stage of sponsorship acquisition, it's about telling the right story, and that story is a combination of opportunity but potential for business return. And I think we have to recognize that as a essential component in the sales cycle is early doors. In your proposal, yes, you have to tell the story that you want your potential partner to see and understand. But that story has really got to demonstrate where there's business potential for them. And that might be potential to acquire customers. It might be potential to reward existing customers and effectively congratulate loyalty. It might be a chance to showcase product. It might be around data collection. It could be ticketing and hospitality. It doesn't really matter. But I think the balance has to be found between, creating a connection through presentation of something appealing and different. And every sponsorship property is idiosyncratic in a good way. So there's a unique story for everyone to tell around their values and their audience and their goals and progression. But then it's about laying into that where there is scope for a third party to really drive the value through the association. And that's where sometimes we can sink out of kilter as salespeople. Too much story, not enough action, not enough return and ROI. So for me, that is probably the single biggest challenge in a proposal is getting that two-tiered approach to be compatible and to flow in a way that's really easy for your potential partner to read and to visualize what you're proposing through the opportunity that we represent.
Yeah, great. We know that sponsorship is all about metrics and KPIs. And what would you recommend to a rights holder or a seller, in terms of the expectation at the end of the event or the project or the deal itself, that the sponsor wants to measure the success or not of the sponsorship? And how can rights holders and sellers demonstrate that return on investment already during proposal and negotiation stage to the potential sponsor to say, hey, come on board. All of this will justify you becoming a commercial partner. Catherine?
Well, look, I mean, my first tip is not to wait to the end, right? Like for me, good management around evaluation and measurement starts in the negotiation of the first deal. So what can happen all too easily is that measurement comes last, and before you know it, project started, the season started, the activation, which, let's face it, is kind of fun and interesting to do, that takes over. Everyone's in delivery mode. Nobody's in collection mode. Nobody's saying, okay, well, what is this doing now? And as sponsorship has become more integrated into marketing and it is challenged to do more things simultaneously, you have to get your baseline sorted right at the start. So let's take, for example, a sponsor whose objective is around changing brand perception. Well, the only way you can measure that is if you start right at the beginning and say to your audience, what do you think of this sponsor's brand on day one versus what do you think of this sponsor's brand on day 365 versus what do you think of this sponsor's brand on day 700? So it's difficult for me to suggest a kind of hard and fast framework for evaluation, because every opportunity, every sponsorship partnership has different priorities and circles around different objectives, and that very much influences what and how you will measure. But what I think I would say as a definite hard and fast rule is that you should be talking about measurement when you're negotiating the first deal, so that is locked in to the contract and each party knows what they're doing well and who is responsible for what. And I think linked to that, and going back perhaps to what I was expressing a couple of questions ago, when you find a sponsor that has shared objectives with you, then the measurement becomes shared. So historically, we've kind of done measurement as sellers to prove the concept to the sponsor. But when you're in shared space, you've got the opportunity to do measurement for both parties, for both buyer and seller, because you're equally interested to know the outcome. And that's generally really a more positive space to be in around demonstrating return on investment. But probably first and foremost, I'd say look into what is the return on objectives that you're seeking to contract in the first place. Then start working through what is the measurement, what are the measurement techniques that you will use to find that answer. Because I think another trap that is easily fallen into is to measure the wrong thing, right? Because you only measure brand if you're interested in a shift in some kind of brand metric. If you're only interested in the hospitality effect of your sponsorship partner, if it's about lead generation, if it's about entertainment and high quality guesting, then that's what you want to measure, right? You don't really care whether a wider group of people can recall the brand or not. So yeah, in summary, I'd say it starts with the contract, and it starts with understanding and documenting what the objectives of the partnership are, and then actually it's pretty easy to layer on the how you will do it. It's only when you're sort of retrospectively fitting it that you hit the problem zone.
Interesting. So having done the deal between the two parties, the seller and the sponsor, it would be easy to say you have to do the following to maintain a good relationship. But what are the pitfalls that a rights holder or a seller should be on the lookout for, even a sponsor for that matter, as a commercial partner, just to keep a good relationship going and to ensure that we all deliver on the long-term partnership expectations?
I mean, I think the two critical sort of aspects to this are briefing and communication. So I think because sponsorship, when it's activated, exists right across a rights holder's property, it's going to interconnect with lots of different departments, from finance to hospitality to branding to marketing, comms, etc. It is absolutely essential that your colleagues understand what you know about the sponsorship agreement and what the expectation is collectively and cross-departmentally in terms of delivery. So it's easy to assume that others can understand the what and the why of the sponsor's motivation. But actually, what I have found in my career of 20-something years of sponsorship selling is that briefing is the single most important step that you can undertake as a seller to get off on the right foot with your sponsor partner, because people can get annoyed about the smallest things, even as something as simple as how they've been invoiced for their rights fee. So just make sure everybody knows what they should be doing. I think in terms of the maintenance of the relationship with the sponsor itself, that is around good communication. Frequency, agreeing frequency around communication, agreeing format, and knowing what key performance indicators there are across the term that will help you both to be able to report on the relative success of the partnership. So I think one of the challenges for sellers is if you get a quiet sponsor who kind of says, no, I'm fine, I'm totally fine, I'm all right, you're delivering my rights, I'm kind of happy with that. Because it doesn't give you enough to sort of start fueling renewal, to start, to really understand how things are being received at their end. So I think another tip I would say is still within this kind of communication concept, but is to create connections at lots of different levels. So you will have, as the seller, your connection, let's say you've sold to the marketing director. But what you want to do is create a connection above that. So your CEO talks to their CEO or has a relationship there. You want connections to the side of that. Your financial director knows their financial director. You want, below that, your marketing assistant, your, delivery assistant knows their delivery assistant. So that you're hearing information at different tiers of their business all the time. And if something or someone is to leave or just lose a bit of appetite, you're really able to get on that quickly and stop it becoming terminal, potentially even turning that into an opportunity to sort of redefine the partnership if it needs it, tweak it mid arrangement. So I'd say that is those are kind of those two areas that I would really focus on in terms of developing the relationship that you want and need to firstly ensure this initial term is successful, but secondly to look ahead to possible renewal and progression of the partnership. So yeah, the briefing and the communications.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. As I said earlier on pre the recording, is that I think sponsorship negotiation is a science. Hence, you call it the perfect pitch at the end of the day. And so, for those who would like to enter the domain of sponsorship, or those who are already there, what is the kind of encouragement that you could give to them and say, look, this is an environment where you continually need to upskill yourself, and perhaps do a bit of advertisement here, and we invite them to our planned masterclass coming up later in the year. Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm obviously a big believer in skill set development. I have trained thousands of sponsorship sellers, and this is a unique type of sell. I mean, I've sold advertising, I've sold media, I've sold quite a lot of different elements within marketing. Sponsorship is its own beast, its own entity. It needs a level of sort of strategy and subtlety to execute deals. So I think what we're going to cover in Pitch Perfect is hopefully one of a number of masterclasses we can do together to support the marketplace. But it's a start point. It's the beginning of the cycle. So if you're a seller that's looking to hone their skill set, to get the answer to some of these questions, like how can I get my proposal to resonate more? How do I acquire? How do I actually approach the pitching process? What's simple questions. What's the best way to make a cold approach? How can I transition from only pushing my opportunity to connections that I already have to tackling and being able to confidently and effectively target new clients? That's the sort of skills that we're going to cover in Pitch Perfect. And yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference. Mindset can be very influential for sellers of sponsorship, and I like to think that we can move most sellers into a more positive mindset by empowering them with tools and techniques that support the sale. And I think it starts here with who to pitch, what to pitch, how to pitch it. That gets the ball rolling, that gets your pipeline moving in the right direction. And when you've got a robust pipeline, you feel a lot more confident about what you're going to materialize in terms of a partner family.
Yeah, no, great. Having come to the end of our conversation, that was Catherine Hawkins, Director of Think Sponsorship. Thank you for your time and insights, Catherine, which is very much appreciated. That's where we will leave it for now. And thank you for watching SponsorX, which is hosted on TalkX TV. Until next time.